Hello, I am Reverend Irene Smith, aka Miss Irene for my young peeps, and I want to welcome you to Generationally Speaking. Hey, join us each week as we sit at the table with Gen X, Gen Ys, Gen Zs, and we discuss life issues and we look out from the lenses of each generation and hear the perspectives that we all can learn, we all can garner, and we can all grow. I am always excited to have at the table with me my co host, you know him, Minister James Durham, that Washingtonian who is a Dallas Cowboy fan.
That's right. That's me. Thank you for having me, brother. Always a pleasure to be here.
It's always good to have you. He is a mentor to men of all ages, using the Nehemiah principle to rebuild the walls of their lives. We're looking forward to that day when he writes that book. We're looking forward to that day when he holds that virtual conference, when he holds that in person gathering. We are looking forward to that day. We're going to be there, Pastor Shamik and I. Pastor Shamik is my other co host. She is the founder of Women Who Lead Connect. As you know, her mantra is building the best you. She just recently not only birthed the ministry, but she birthed a baby. So she is getting some much needed bed rest. So she'll be back with us within the next few shows after she gets some rest. We're just excited about what God is doing in her life. And our special guest today, I am excited. We know her through her husband, Ronald McCray. But little did we know that Fatima, who's our guest, Fatima McCray, has a powerful, powerful narrative of her own. And today we're here as she shares with us her book, Eve Before Fruit. And I was just, Fatima McCray, I want to
Yes,
say
ma'am.
I'm excited about you being with us today. And I
Yes,
can't
ma'am.
wait to get into our discussion.
Same here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to sit with you all. So thank you. Thank you for that.
So I was reading, you shared with me just a little bit prologue about your book, and the first statement really grabbed me, and was you wrote, "Have you ever felt trapped in a seemingly endless cycle of trauma, addiction, or depression? Have you
Yes.
struggled consistently with your identity or sense of self worth? Do you wonder if God
Mm.
hears you when you pray?"
Wow.
Man, those three questions alone is volumes. So
Mhm.
tell
Mm.
us how you got to this place of deciding that you were going to write this book.
Yeah, so the Lord is blessed for my husband and I to be able to share our stories on various publications and in interviews, but there was never really a time to delve deep into the practicality of it, like the root of relationship with Christ and what that can do in a life surrendered. God had really put that seed in me early when I was experiencing a lot of the hardship that I've experienced. Before I even reached the healing, he put the seed in me to write a book. So I mean, I was walking around high school and talking to my English teachers, like, when I write a book, you gonna read it. So the seed was already in there. And I thought it was more of a self-help book. But once I came to know Christ and the healing that you can receive from the stripes on his back and from the word that you read in the Bible, from those words of life, once I received that rejuvenation and that healing, I knew what I had to do. The story wasn't about self-help. It was about receiving help from the divine healer. And so God had really laid it on my heart to share the reality of relationship with him. And so it's not just going to church, and it's not just dressing up, and it's not just saying I'm a Christian or talking like a Christian, or, clapping and stomping, though those things are wonderful. But if we're going to talk about how people are radically changed through relationship with Christ, we really got to bare our souls as well and say, here is the truth of where I was. Here is how I got from where I was to where I am, and all the muck in between, and what I'm still allowing the Lord to do in me. And so with the help of God, really sat down and said, Lord, tell me how to share my story in a way that not only glorifies you, but begs people to come and to see what they can receive of your bosom as well, that they can receive not only salvation, which is after death, but healing here on the earth. So that was the heart behind it. I know what it's like to be in a cycle of depression. I know what it's like to be in a cycle of trauma and sexual assault and alcoholism and drug addiction, sex addiction, pornography addiction, not even just low self-esteem, lack of self-worth. I know how that feels. And when a lot of people see me, they say, oh, you're so bubbly and you're so smiley and you're so funny. But I'm like, you have no clue what the Lord has truly done in my life. And I feel like so many people bear that story, but may not share that story. And so the people that are still in those cycles don't know that that's where the smiley face comes from. That's where, the bubbly person, that's where they come from. But God has made such a radical change in their heart, in their mind, in their countenance, that they're able to walk in joy and health and peace. And so I wanted to share so that the people that are where I was and can relate to my story know that there is healing and there is help and that there is freedom in the cross of Christ.
Minister Durham, there's a song I grew up listening to, and it said, smiling faces tell lies.
I know that. Yeah. So with that, a lot of times when people see you in your polished state and your finished state, and you've already become the overcomer and the conqueror, it's hard for them to imagine you in darkness. So can you just kind of share a little about how was it coming out of that dark place you were in?
Yes, definitely. There came a moment, God had already been speaking to me, and I didn't really have a knowledge of God to understand that this was the God of the Bible. I didn't have a reverence of God, but I heard a voice in my mind that would speak to me sometimes, and it would say, I have a work for you to do. And when I say sometimes, I mean, when I was high, when I was drunk, when I wanted to die, like the Lord would speak that thing to me. And it's like in the Bible where it talks about that group of individuals who they were worshiping all of these different gods, and they were ministered to by a disciple of Christ, and they made an altar to the unknown God. Mm-hmm. If he exists, if he's all powerful, okay, we're gonna make sure we give him a little worship too. But that's kind of where my prayers went to. I didn't know his name, I didn't know who he was, but I knew that he spoke to me. And so that gave me a little bit of hope, even though I didn't understand kind of the roots of that hope. But for me, once I got to the point where I didn't want to drink anymore, I was in such a horrible place in my life. I would describe myself as the pulp that life chewed up and spit out. That's how I saw myself. I would describe myself as like the wounded, battered puppy that's just cowering in the corner and is afraid to let anybody touch them. Like that is literally where I was and how I was. So I was looking for a change. I was looking for a way to be made new. I was looking for an opportunity to live a life that wasn't bound by my past transgressions and traumas and brokenness and addictions. I was looking for a way out. And so when I learned that everything that I had been looking for was already written in a book that was created over the span of thousands of years before I was even born, before I was a thought, before my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother were even born, that the answer was there. It was transformational. And I said, you know what, this is the road that I shall take. And so it was difficult kind of walking out of that dark place because I had to learn a new way to view myself, even though I thought I was ugly, even though I thought I was tarnished. When I was baptized in Jesus' name, all that was gone. The Lord said, you are a new creature. You arise from the water in the newness of life. You arise from the water in the newness of life. You are literally a new creature now. When I pour my spirit into you, that gives you power. You don't have to be afraid. You don't have to feel intensely insecure. You don't have to be wrought with anxiety. You don't have to be crippled by that imposter syndrome that what if people knew that I wasn't this. You get to walk in the authority of who I created you to be. So once I learned that I can default to what the word of God says about me and what God has spoken over me, as opposed to what I have thought about myself for decades, it was so freeing. It was so freeing. There is a God in heaven that created everything and literally stitched me together in my mother's womb and spoke purpose into my members before they were formed. That was transformational to learn. So I said, Lord, create in me who I was created to be. That woman that you had in your mind's eye, when you crafted me together in my mother's womb, you do everything intentionally. That woman, created me that woman. If she's strong, I want to be strong. If she's healed, I want to be healed. If she's powerful, I want to speak with power and authority. If she can cast out demons, and if she can cast down barriers, I want to do that, Lord. That's who I want to be. So hit the reset button on my life. Literally hit reset. Restore me back to factory settings. And that's kind of where the title of the book comes from. Eve before fruit, before corruption, before sin, before there was ever pain introduced into my life, when it was just purpose, when there was just purity. Restore me back to a place where I walk in every ounce of your purpose for me, where I exude every ounce of your will for my life. And that's what the book is about. And that's the journey that I'm still on, but God has done so much work that I had to tell it.
So as you begin to do your work and to write your book, and you had to begin to, in writing and recalling, and you had to begin to unearth things that you had, buried, and things you really had never shared with anyone. Were you able to begin to identify where some of this thought of no value began to grow inside of you? Were you able to see where that began?
Yes, ma'am. I will say writing down, because the first 4 chapters, you really see the wounds. And you really see the wounds. And I even put a little disclaimer in the beginning to say, it's going to be a little rough, the first 3 chapters, but I have to tell the depth so you can really understand the height. So it doesn't just seem like a flat, oh, God is good and he's done great things. You need to understand what it is. And so writing those first 3 chapters was so difficult. Those 3 chapters were the chapters that had me extending my writing time over a span of years as opposed to a span of months, because every time I would write about something that's, traumatic, and it would unearth those feelings. Sometimes when you go through traumatic events, you don't live with that every day, and you shouldn't, because you'll go crazy. So that's not on your mind constantly revolving and revolving. So when I had to sit and write it all down one after the other, it was difficult. And there were some times where I had to step away and really pray and say, okay, Lord, apparently I ripped off a scab and I'm bleeding now. So I need you to apply some more salve of your word. I need you to speak into me and reaffirm. I need you to help me here. And when I even attempted to start writing the book, I started going back to therapy. I'm not going to lie to you. I surely did. Just in case. So I started therapy again. So it was difficult, but I did see so much more of how I got to that desperate place right before I got saved, how I, saw myself as devalued, not only because of what I had experienced, molestation and a myriad of sexual assaults, but also what I had heard from some family members as a child. Those things still ringing about and echoing in my heart and my mind. And even when they weren't around to say those things to me, what they said, I carried it with me and it revolved. And then I would say it to myself. So I think for me, losing my parents at a young age, those people that affirm you the most, those people that kind of early on guide your identity, you look like you have their nose, you have their ears, you have their voice, you have their interest in movies. Becoming an orphan by 7 was really devastating. Then sexual assaults began to happen. Then I went into live with a family member who I just didn't feel loved with, and another family member who just really flat out hated me, and probably still hate me, but it not because of anything that I had done, but I don't know if I'll ever fully understand that, but they just berated me consistently. And you're not going to be anything. You'll never go anywhere. You're nothing. Reminded me that I'm really no more than a motherless, fatherless child that has no place in their family. And after all that I had experienced and was experiencing, even at that time, before I got out of high school, I had already been molested, raped, and sexually assaulted twice. And these are different individuals. And so in addition to that, I also have a family member who berates me consistently, who would lie on me, who would, try to separate me from my other family members and turn them against me and say that I'm saying this about them, or trying to destroy, something that they're trying to do, like literally would try to make me the villain in every scenario. And I'm like, where's my place of solace? Where is who is going to pour into me something good and not something bitter? Like what is my place on this earth? And so I ran out searching, I ran away. And that's where I had a very quick understanding that the things that you experience carry with you until they are dealt with. Until you either go to therapy or you hand it over to the Lord, or both. And because I couldn't deal with all that was weighing on my heart and weighing on my mind, I started drinking at a young age, 14. I started popping ecstasy. I started smoking marijuana. I started staying out late. And I was just really living in a rut. I lived in a way, I wrote that in my book, I lived in a way that didn't regard life or death. And when I wrote all of those things in order, I could see how I got to where I got to. And it was difficult writing that, but there was also a freedom, because I'm like, now I see the trails. I see the trails of how I got to that place of deep depression. I see the trails of why I was acting out in that way and searching for love through sex and through men and through women and through all of these different things, searching for like peace at the bottom of a bottle. Now I see where that came from. And so I think knowing is definitely half the battle. And then the other half is giving it to God and saying, help me with these broken pieces to make them something beautiful. And so, yeah, that's what the Lord has allowed me to do. Now I get a chance to tell my story, and it doesn't pain me to tell it, but I can talk about the purpose of it. So, yeah.
Looking back on all of that pain and trauma that you did experience, and then to say, I can see the purpose or find the purpose of it. What would you say about purpose and in your story and where God was leading you?
I do believe that everyone has a purpose. And I do believe that sometimes purpose doesn't look like what we think it should. It may not be that everybody's going to be a millionaire. That's not necessarily a person's purpose. It may not be, that your life is always going to be sunshine and roses, and that's purpose. Purpose is whatever God calls purpose. So it reminds me of the story of the blind man in the Bible. And when the disciples came and they were talking to Jesus, and they said, well, who has sinned that this man is blind? Was it his parents? Was it him? Who did it? And Jesus said, no one has sinned. It's just so the glory of God can be revealed here. And so that for me was transformational, because that's how I asked the Lord. I surely did. I said, well, why did I have to go through so much to get here? And the Lord instilled in me that it was for his glory to be revealed, that he is going to pour so much healing into me that I get to share it with others. And it sounds crazy, but even after all of that, just to hear that there was a purpose in the pain was good enough for me. I'm like, as long as it wasn't happening haphazardly, that you just weren't there at all, that you had your back turned and your eyes closed and you turned back around and you said, oh, wait a minute, come here. As long as that's not what happened, but it all was for a purpose. Show me what the purpose is. I'm listening. I'm willing to stay with you. If you can show me something beautiful from this mess, if you can show me that I'm still worthy, that I'm still beautiful, even though I've been broken so much. And so oftentimes, we like to talk about what Job got, but not what Job experienced. And so I'm grateful that even before I knew God and I dealt with that brokenness, it was all for a purpose. And now I'm walking in purpose on purpose. So, yeah.
So when you were writing and you were able to identify that the darkest moments,
yes, ma'am,
that you were just falling and the depression was closing in, were you able also then to, as you look back now, to see how God, even in the darkest of moments, that God was still sending light through a person, through an event, someone reaching in? Were you able to sense that?
Yes, definitely. I'm getting emotional a little teeny bit, but no, but definitely. I think sometimes you do, when you're out of a situation and you can look back at it with fresh eyes, you can really see where the grace of God lies in it. And there were so many people that God was sent to me to say, you're going to make it through this. Whether it was a teacher that saw me writing poetry, even though I was skipping class and came to school high all the time. If I was in class, whether it was a teacher who said, you write really well, let me take you to Sankofa bookstore. And this is a true story. I didn't make it in the book, but it's a true story. Took me to Sankofa bookstore for a poetry reading, so that I would see the worth in my writing and the worth of telling my story. Or whether it was the father of a friend, so that when I ran away and he saw that I was essentially homeless and I told him my story, he said, you can live with me. You're going to be fine. You're doing a great job. And he gave me affirmation where I hadn't heard affirmation. And it's a powerful thing to receive affirmation from someone who doesn't want something from you. I think it may be often overlooked, but for a child, that's what they need. Because when they grow up and they're an adult and they think affirmation is about exchange. If I do this for you, you'll affirm me. If I do this well enough, you'll speak well of me. And there's no boundaries when it comes to that. You'll give whatever just to hear something positive. And so whether it was that or someone, when I was in the military, I had some really great friends who were like family to me that took me in and that, kind of helped me out because I was very socially awkward. And on top of that, you have the Lord, the literal God of heaven, speaking to me every now and then. I have work for you to do. I have work for you to do. And I would speak back. I'm not ready yet. But I found it so interesting. And I'm like, Lord, if it wasn't for those little places that you injected people into my life, and also even your word into my life, times where I had the pills in my hand and I was going to take them, or I was on the rifle range in the military and I said, all I have to do is jump in front of the line. And they couldn't catch me in time. And there would be just that little, even the smallest things, even in nature, I'm being dead serious, even in nature. I remember a time, this did not make it in the book either, but God is in this. So I remember a time I was sitting outside. This is when I was in the military, and I had another moment where I was realizing that, again, your pain carries with you. So I was like, well, if I go into the military, I can be somebody. And, I can be somebody that other people can look up to. Again, I'm trying to find purpose and worth through works. I can be a military member. I can do this. I can do that. I'll be this person now. Maybe this person has some worth. And I started to realize that the same old things are coming back again, the same old ways of thinking, the same old bad habits, the same old pain is revolving yet again. And I was having a moment because I was arguing with my boyfriend at the time. And I walked out of the house and I sat on the stoop. And there were moments where I had these deep depressive episodes when nobody understood the depths of how sad I really was or how desperate I really was. It may have seemed like a light thing on the inside of the house, but when I went outside and I had that moment with myself, I really began falling. And all of a sudden, as tears are falling down my face, a little light went ahead and brushed my cheek. And I looked down and I saw this little ant. And to others, that may not be a thing, but God is in control of everything. And I really believe that this was another little sign from God that you can carry it. So I saw this little teeny ant. And an ant can lift 50 times their weight. I saw this little ant carrying this huge leaf. Huge leaf. And just living his best life, walking across the way. And I was like, I can do it. Okay. Let me just take a minute. Let me collect myself. And I truly believe the Lord works in that way as well. He speaks through a multitude of things. He is the God of all flesh. He is in control of everything. There is nothing that is out of his reach. And even in moments now that I know him, and I know how to view instances like that when I feel depressed and I may feel that wind, or it may be raining and I'm like, Lord, I can't take this. And all of a sudden the sun will peek out from the cloud. And I'm just like, Lord, I love you. You're here. You're here. So those were the things that carried me through. And for me, it doesn't take a lot. I just need a little hope. Sprinkle a little upon me and I'll be all right.
That's amazing. And to talk about purpose and God's purpose on your life, like the message he gave you, eat before fruit, that's going to bless so many people. But the thing about God's purpose is it can be overwhelming, it can inspire a lot of fear and anxiety in you. And particularly for a purpose in your kind of situation where you have to be so transparent. How did you get over fear? That, oh my God, this is not me. I can't live up to this. How did you get beyond it? And then to be able to open yourself so transparent in front of potentially millions of people. How did you get beyond that?
I really had to default to the Lord. And I truly believe we can't just talk about purpose and the beauty of it. Like, I know you have such a great purpose for me, Lord, and that's the high of it. But then the other side is now you got to be obedient. So now, if God is saying that you're a speaker and you want to share your story out and all this and that means you had a lot of times God calls us to a purpose that surpasses our insecurities, that surpasses our ability in our minds to do what God is calling us to. So with Moses, he had him literally go tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. And Moses was like, wait a minute, God, but you created me with a speech impediment. Hold on. So for me, I was like, Lord, I suffer from anxiety. I suffer from, terrible stage fright. Like I would just shake and sweat. It was terrible. And the Lord is like, now go speak. And I'm like, Jesus. But that's how God gets the glory. And I had to really default and learn that. I can't just say it's so beautiful that God spoke purpose into me when I was being formed in my mother's womb and then say, well, I'm refusing that purpose. I'm just going to do my own thing. How can I do that? So I said, you know what, Lord, in those moments where I'm too afraid, I need you to put the burden on my chest for the women that are the women that are supposed to be reading this story, the men that are supposed to be reading this story, the ones that are broken and need to know that God can literally put you back together again. And it reminds me of there's a saying in like Japanese culture. It's called kintsukuroi. So it's called the golden men. So literally when you break a piece of pottery, like a bowl or a plate, you don't throw it away because it's broken, but you literally put it back together with golden lacquer. You literally form it back together. You pick up all the broken pieces and you form it back together into something that's so much more beautiful in the beginning. And the understanding is even the cracks are beautiful. It adds to the value. And so I'm like, you know what, Lord, I don't want everything that I've experienced to be in vain because I refuse to walk in the purpose that you called me into before I was formed. So lay on my chest the burden of the women that need to hear it. Lay on my chest the burden of who I'm meant to impact. Because at the end of the day, and this is my motto, I want to exhaust every God-given gift that he's placed in me. I want to go before him at the end of all of this when I stand before the Lord and literally be so empty. I want to use up the fumes. And I'm like, Lord, if that means, because casting down your flesh is not just casting down sin, it's also casting down your insecurities and exchanging them for what God says you can do and who you are.
Amen. So tell us how we can get the book.
Yes, ma'am. So right now you can go on my website, FetimaSMcCray.com, FETIMA. S as in Sam, MCCRAY.com to get this wonderful author's edition here, which is the glossy cover and the full color. You cannot see when I'm doing that, but the full color. Also, we'll have the Amazon copy available. Should be available tomorrow as well. The ebook should be available by the end of the week on Amazon as well. But right now, Fetima